Before I get to this video, I really want to say, I wish I had a sponsor. If I was monetized, this shit would be immediately demonetized. But no, I'm a small creator with a small but loyal fan base. And for that small but loyal fan base, I thank them. But I really want some Raid Shadow Legends money, damn it. But totally not gonna get that. So instead, I'm just gonna hope that one day, someday, I will get that Raid Shadow Legends money. I have no segue into something serious, so I'll just say, it's time for something serious. Let's move on. Last week, I talked about two 12-year-olds who stabbed their friend 19 times, and the victim survived. This week, I'm going to talk about gang mentality when a group of teenage girls didn't just stab a 12-year-old girl, but also beat her with a tire iron and then later set her on fire. There's also grooming in the story, and abuse, and a powder keg of mental states that would lead to the night of January 11th, 1992, when Shanda Sharer was brutally murdered. Shanda was born June 6, 1979, in Pineville, Kentucky, to Stephen Sharer and Jacqueline. Soon after her birth, her parents divorced, and her mother remarried, becoming Jacqueline Vaught. Her family moved to Louisville, Kentucky, where Shanda would spend her 5th and 6th grade years. She was athletic, trying out and earning spots on sports teams. She was a cheerleader. She played volleyball, and she played softball. In June of 1991, Jacqueline once again got divorced and moved her family to New Albany, Indiana. Shanda would enroll in Hazelwood Middle School. There, she would get into a fight with a woman named Amanda Heverin. After serving time in detention, the two became close. Now, Amanda Heverin wasn't 12. She was roughly 14 or 15 when she met Shanda. I say this because Amanda and Shanda began exchanging love letters. This is the part that I consider grooming because of Amanda's age compared to Shanda's. She shouldn't have encouraged this type of behavior. While there is a 2 to 3 year difference between the two, Shanda was 12. Far too young to be romanced in any way. According to Shanda's mother, there was a change in Shanda during this time. She was less happy, more angry and confused. She had a lot going on in her life. Because of her relationship with Amanda, she started to receive death threats. And it was because of those death threats that Amanda's mother had pulled her out of school. She ended up enrolling Shanda in Our Lady of Perpetual Help School. This was a Catholic school, and she seemed to have turned herself around. Without the influence of Amanda weighing on her, she joined the basketball team and seemed to become more happy. Unfortunately, the one that was sending death threats was Amanda's ex-girlfriend, Melinda Loveless, and she wasn't about to let this go. Melinda Loveless was born October 26, 1975. She was the youngest of 3 daughters of Marjorie and Larry Loveless. Larry was a Vietnam vet, but he was also considered a sexual deviant. He would wear his wife's and his daughter's underwear, wear makeup, and was incapable of staying faithful to his wife. He had a weird obsession with watching his wife have sex with other men and women, and then have a mix of jealousy and arousal. He worked on and off in different places. He never bothered to share his income with his family and was violent and abusive to them. Marjorie was the same, worked intermittently throughout her life. Marjorie unfortunately was also the victim of sexual abuse from her husband, including taking part in sexual acts for his pleasure. Because of this, she became suicidal. Larry once punished her for trying to kill herself by having her accosted by his friends, something Melinda and her sisters were in the house for and heard. Larry did abuse Melinda's sister, but it isn't known if he did to Melinda. Melinda has never admitted to that happening to her, but there is a good possibility that she was. At one point, her parents joined a Baptist church where they denounced their pasts and attempted to live a better life. But that was very short-lived. Everything came crashing down in November of 1990. Larry was caught by Marjorie spying on Melinda and her friends. Marjorie grabbed a knife and attacked him with it, all while Melinda and her friends watched. When Larry left, Marjorie tried to kill herself. Larry would file for divorce and abandon his family. It left Melinda distraught. She would sleep in his bed at night. He even sent letters to her and playing on her emotions. But eventually, he would never speak to his daughter again. Marjorie, for her part, was no better. When Melinda came out as gay, Marjorie was disgusted by it. It took a bit before she learned to live with it. Lori Tackett was one of Melinda's friends. Born October 5, 1974 in Madison, Indiana, Lori was raised by a fundamentally devout Pentecostal mother and a father who worked in factories with 2 felony convictions in his past. Tackett herself claims at a young age she was sexually abused twice, once at age 5 and then once at age 12. Lori Tackett and her mother butted heads on a regular basis. Lori was rebellious and her mother's faith made it impossible to avoid confrontation. Lori's mother once strangled her for wearing jeans at school, something that caused social workers to have to come to the home to make sure that Lori wasn't being abused. Lori began to enjoy the darker things in life, Ouija boards and the occult. Before she met Melinda, Lori was friends with Hope Rippey. When Hope's father bought the girls a Ouija board, Lori's mother demanded it be burned and Hope's home be exorcised. Lori also liked to pretend she was possessed by a vampiric spirit she called Deanna. Lori would end up being caught by her mother cutting herself, mostly after she began dating a girl who had the tendency to do the same. She was checked into a mental institution on March 19, 1991, but she would be released soon after and prescribed antidepressants. Then, 2 days after being released, with her girlfriend and a teen named Toni Lawrence, she cut herself too deeply and was rushed to hospital. She would be again placed in a mental hospital where they found she had borderline personality disorder. When she was released, she dropped out of high school and stayed in Louisville, Kentucky. It was there, in November of 1991, that she would meet Melinda Loveless. She ended up moving back to Madison, Indiana, but on the promise she would buy herself a car. She would spend a lot of time with Melinda after this. Hope Rippey was born on June 9, 1976 in Madison, Indiana. Her father and mother ended up divorcing in 1985 and she moved with her mother to Michigan. She has described this time in her life as turbulent. But in 1987, her parents reunited and moved back to Madison, where she reunited with her friends Toni Lawrence and Lori Tackett. Her parents, though, didn't like Lori. They felt she was a bad influence on the young girl, and they were right. By age 15, Hope was beginning to harm herself just like Lori was. Toni Lawrence was born on Valentine's Day, February 14, 1976. Unlike Lori and Melinda, Toni's parents were never the cause of her trauma. When Toni was 9, a close relative abused her, and when she was 14, she was assaulted by a teenage boy. The police did nothing for Toni in these instances. The only thing they did was to order the teenage boy to never go near Toni. With no one to understand the pain of what she was going through, she relied heavily on her friendships with Hope and Lori. But Lori would introduce Toni and Hope to Melinda. In 1990, Amanda Heavern and Melinda Loveless began dating. Melinda's violent tendencies were already manifesting by that time, though. She would get into fights at school. She would have reports sent home that she was depressed. But as the year progressed, Amanda decided to get out of their relationship. Though they never formally broke up, the relationship between the two had soured immensely. Then, Amanda met Shanda. Melinda became jealous of this, and when Amanda and Shanda attended a dance together, Melinda confronted them. Melinda soon began dating another girl, but the fury she felt was lingering. Melinda began to threaten Shanda publicly, threatening to kill her. This and the feeling that Amanda was a threat to their daughter is what caused Shanda's parents to pull her from the school and into the Catholic school. But all this did was buy her a small amount of time, because Melinda wasn't going to let it go. On the night of January 10th, 1992, Lori drove Toni and Hope to Melinda's home in New Albany. Hope and Toni had never met Melinda before. Lori was their friend, and Toni and Hope were friends with Lori. Once there, all three borrowed some clothes from Melinda, and that is when she showed them the knife. Lori knew the plan, but the plan she had been told was that Melinda only wanted to scare Shanda. Melinda told the others about Shanda and how she felt that Shanda stole her girlfriend away from her. Hope drove them to Jeffersonville, Indiana, a place where Shanda stayed with her father on weekends. They pulled up to Shanda's father's house. Melinda then told them the plan: to lure Shanda out of her home. Toni and Hope would go to the door. They would get Shanda's attention. They would tell her that they were friends of Amanda, and Amanda is waiting for her at a witch's castle, an old ruin that overlooks the Ohio River. Once in the car, they would scare her. But that's not what happened. Hope and Tony did what they were asked to do, but because it was early in the night, Shanda told them that she couldn't because her parents were still awake, but told them to come back around midnight. So they left and Melinda was furious. But Tony and Hope reassured her that they were going to go back for her later. They would drive to Louisville and attend a punk rock concert, but Melinda grew bored with the music fast. She had one thing on her mind and she wasn't going to stop until she got it. Tony and Hope also lost interest, deciding to just use Lori's car for some carnal pleasures with two boys they didn't know. Once they were on their way back, a red flag should have gone off in the others' heads when Melinda stated that she couldn't wait to kill Shanda. But it didn't. They returned to the house at 12:30 a.m. on January 11th, 1992. Hope and Tony again went to get Shanda's attention, telling her Amanda was still at the witch's castle. Shanda was reluctant at first, but agreed to go, changing her clothes and meeting them at the car. Once she was in the car, Melinda leapt up from the back seat, putting the knife to Shanda's throat. She began interrogating a frightened Shanda about her relationship with Amanda. They made their way to the witch's castle with Shanda pleading to be taken back home. There they tied her up, took her jewelry and watch and taunted her, claiming the old ruin was filled with human remains and that Shanda was going to be the next one to litter the soil. Lori then, for some reason, found a shirt in her car with a smiley face on it and decided to light it on fire. The others were afraid that passing cars would see it, stomped out the fire, and decided to leave. Also, for some reason, Melinda wanted Shanda's bra, so forced her to take it off and switch with her, which is just really fucked up. Before I start this next part, viewer discretion is highly advised. This is gonna get dark and disturbing really fast. They ended up at another abandoned building deep down in a forested area. Lori knew of the place and thought it would be perfect. Once there, Melinda would force Shanda to strip to her underwear. Then Melinda began beating her up. Melinda slammed her knee into Shanda's face repeatedly, punching her, kicking her. She tried to slash Shanda's throat with a knife, but it was too dull. Then Hope came and held Shanda down. Then Lori and Melinda began stabbing Shanda, taking turns with the knife. They strangled her with a rope until she was unconscious. They threw her body in the trunk and began to leave, telling Hope and Tony that Shanda was dead. They ended up at Lori's home where they had sodas and cleaned themselves. That's when they heard screaming from the trunk. Lori drew a paring knife, opened the trunk, and stabbed Shanda. After Lori cleaned up, she read the girls' futures with runestones. Hope and Tony would stay behind as Lori and Melinda decided to go cruising. It was then they heard Shanda gurgling and crying. Lori would pull off the road and would open the trunk. Shanda would sit up with her eyes rolled back in her head, but Lori began beating her with a tire iron. Lori returned and told the others what happened with glee, but Lori's mother woke up and yelled at Lori for being out late. Lori would take the others home, but would stop at a burn pile where they opened the trunk. Hope would spray Windex on Shanda and ask, "Not looking so hot now, are you?" After all she went through, Shanda still wasn't dead, even though the other four thought she was. At a gas station, Lori bought gas for her car and a 2-liter bottle of Pepsi. She would dump out the Pepsi and fill the bottle with gasoline. Hope would lead them to Lemon Road. There, they wrapped Shanda in a blanket. Hope and Lori carried her to a field. Then they set her on fire. Tony, for her part, stayed in the car for this. But Melinda, paranoid as she was, thought that Shanda wasn't dead, so they returned, poured the rest of the gas on their already burning body. That was how Shanda died, set on fire on the side of the road. Hope, Lori, Melinda, and Tony would stop at a McDonald's, reveling in what they just did, including one making a joke on how Shanda would look like one of the sausages they were eating. But Tony would call a friend and tell them what happened. Lori would take Hope and Tony home, and then went to her own home with Melinda. It was there a friend of Melinda's, Crystal Wathen, would come over. The two would tell Crystal about what happened with glee. The three of them would go over to Amanda's home and Melinda would tell her the story. Crystal and Amanda at first didn't believe them, but then Lori showed them the trunk. Then the realization set in, and Melinda kissed Amanda, asking her not to tell a soul and that she loved Amanda. Amanda would agree before heading back into her house. What happened to Shanda happened in the course of an entire night. She was alive for 8 hours, trapped in a hell that 4 teenagers put upon her. To say these 4 teenagers were sadistic and demented is an insult to sadistic and demented people. What happened that night was downright demonic. They were laughing and full of glee with what they did. But guess what? They were not laughing very long. To say things moved along fast is putting it lightly. A couple of hours after the murder, two brothers were driving down the road when they spotted Shanda. At first, they thought it was a mannequin. They investigated and realized it was the body of a child. They called authorities roughly around 10:55 a.m. They were asked to return to the corpse and wait for the police. Ironically, the first responding officer would later be tried and convicted of murdering his own family, but he was later found innocent. This has nothing to do with the case, but it is an interesting piece of trivia. The guy's name was David Cam, by the way. To put it into perspective on how fast her body was discovered, the incident at McDonald's where they compared Shanda to a burnt sausage happened at 9:30. Depending on how far away the McDonald's was from the dump site, it is safe to assume that the murder happened at least 2 hours from when she was discovered. Which also means when Lori and Melinda were bragging to their friends what they did, Shanda was being found. There are pictures of Shanda's body after this, but I'm not going to put it in this video. One is of her chest with stab wounds and burns, and it's kind of disgusting to look at. It's not something that should be on YouTube, let alone on Murderpedia where it actually is. At first, investigators assumed that it was a drug deal gone wrong. Her face and hands were badly burned, rendering any type of identification on the scene impossible. Shanda's father, Steven, noticed Shanda wasn't around early in the morning as well, so he contacted neighbors who hadn't seen her. Then he contacted her mother, and the two went to the police at 1:45 p.m. to file a missing persons report. Tony and Hope must have felt either an immense amount of guilt or they decided to save their own skin, because at 8:20 p.m. they went to the police and frantically confessed to what happened. Because they were not familiar with Shanda, they only had her first name, but it did lead authorities to know that Lori and Melinda were a part of the plot. After obtaining dental records, police were able to connect Shanda's body with her missing persons report. Stephen, her father, became distraught. With the statements from Hope and Tony, Lori and Melinda were arrested that night. They may have started the day maniacally taking joy from what they did, but by that night, they were not laughing, especially when all four girls would be tried as adults, which means they could have received the death penalty. All four girls would end up taking plea deals in order to avoid the death penalty. But there are other things the courts considered when sentencing them, so I'm going to go over the mitigating factors that led to the sentences they got. All four had troubled backgrounds, with Hope having the least amount but still having some troubles in her life. Tony, Melinda, and Lori had all been abused. Lori's BPD was taken into consideration as she constantly hallucinated, but out of all of them, Melinda had it the worst. She was abused mentally, physically, and sexually by her father. She had a history of mental problems and was known to be violent. While none of this excuses the crimes that they committed, it does make others understand the mental state of these girls. But understanding someone's mental state does not excuse their actions. What they did was savage and demented. While I do feel bad for the environment they were raised in, I am appalled by their crimes. As it should be. They knew what they were doing. It was premeditated. They were not insane. They were just heartless. As for sentencing, I'm going to go down the line from the least to the most time sentenced. Remember, all four girls pled guilty as a part of their plea deals. Tony pled guilty to 1-count criminal confinement and given 20 years in prison. Tony really did nothing, which isn't a good thing. While she didn't really take part in the murder, she didn't try to stop it or get help for Shanda. Hope was sentenced to 60 years, with 10 years suspended, plus 10 years of medium supervision probation. While she did less than Lori and Melinda, she still took part in the murder. Melinda and Lori were both sentenced to 60 years. But this wouldn't be the end of it, and the four girls would end up released from prison. Melinda's attorney began trying to appeal her sentence in 2007. His argument was that she was profoundly retarded by childhood trauma. Those are his words, not mine. Just saying, YouTube, it's a part of the appeal. Don't get mad at me. He also claimed that her former counseling did not do a good job in representing her. His reasoning is that he believed that there had been no chance that she would get the death penalty and that her attorneys exaggerated the claim that she would. Also, the fact that she was 16 and should not have been given a plea deal without a parent or guardian present. Yeah, the judge dismissed this. So the attorney again tried in 2008, and it was denied. So he threatened to take it to the Supreme Court of Indiana, which didn't happen. Tony was released on December 14th, 2000, serving only 9 years. She was on parole until 2002. Hope was released on April 28th, 2006, but she was on supervised parole until 2011. Lori was released on January 11th, 2018, and served only 1 year of parole. While in prison, Melinda began working with dogs and training them. Shanda's mother would donate a puppy for Melinda to train in Shanda's name.
So Jackie Vaught did something remarkable. She took up Charlie, the breeder, on his idea to donate a puppy in Shanda's honor and let Melinda Loveless train her.
When you found out, she said yes.
Yeah.
What?
You know what? I didn't believe it.
Not until the puppy, Angel, ran into her arms the first time they met in a crowd of people.
Good girl. What have you been doing? That's the one Jackie had touched, had held, had named, and I said, wow.
Well, some think it's weird. According to Shanda's mother, it is what Shanda would have wanted. Melinda has in the years since the murder expressed guilt and regret for her actions, and Shanda's mother felt that Melinda deserved a second chance. Melinda would be released on September 5th, 2019. So, remember Melinda's piece of shit father, Larry? Well, he didn't get away scot-free from the shit that he did to his own family. Because of Melinda's testimony, he faced justice. He was charged with a litany of things, but only one was able to stick. Unfortunately, he didn't get neutered or put in a prison where he would become someone's bitch. He got time served for one, which was sexual battery. But fuck him, and I hope he's dead. Unfortunately, the one who was passed on is Shanda's father. Shanda's death hit him so hard that he became an alcoholic. He died of alcoholism in 2005. According to Shanda's mother, he did everything he could to kill himself without putting the gun to his head. The man died of a broken heart. In 2011, Dr. Phil did a two-part episode called In Cold Blood, A Daughter's Brutal Murder. He had on as guests Shanda's mother and sister Paige. Both confronted Hope. I'm not going to make any comment on this. I just want y'all to see what this confrontation was like. Tell me what you think of this clip.
Why did you want to be here today?
There were a couple reasons why I wanted to be here. I just felt that it was important that if you had contacted the show and you felt like you needed closure, that if there was anything that I could do to help with that, then I felt like it was important for me to be here for that. And I've not apologized to you in court or at any other time because I just haven't felt that.
Do you think I'm sorry is going to change anything?
No, I don't. I don't at all.
Okay.
And that's why I haven't. I've always felt like it was not anything that you needed, I don't know necessarily to say needed is appropriate, but I just have never felt like it was something that I should do, and especially not in a courtroom. And I felt like if this was my opportunity to express that to you, that I should take that opportunity.
Oh, and I forgot to mention this. Hope's mugshot has her smiling. And if you think the balding Texas with a glorious mustache would not mention it, well...
What I don't get is this picture right here.
I know.
This is a mugshot where you've been arrested after the death of an innocent child. And you're smiling ear to ear.
When I was arrested and I was taken in to be fingerprinted and have my mugshot taken, the two detectives that were with me were joking about my age and referring to the fact that they had kids my age, and they were just trying, because I was upset and I was crying, and they were trying to...
What were you upset and crying about?
Because of what had happened and what was going on.
Were you crying when she was burning and begging for her mommy?
Actually, I was.
You were?
Yeah, actually I was.
So how did you keep pouring the gasoline on her when she... And you were crying while you were pouring gasoline?
Oh, and if you think that Amanda Hevrin, the woman who was at the center of this issue, was a good person, well...
Feels that you molested their daughter.
Well, you can't molest somebody when she came to me first. I never came to Shanda like that. Shanda locked me in her bathroom and made the first move on me, not the other way around.
Did you have a sexual relationship with her?
Yes.
If there's a clip of Shanda's mom confronting Amanda, I would pay to see it, but I couldn't find it. Finally, from the same episode, let's look at Lori Tackett's statement.
I didn't know Shanda at all. I didn't go into that evening knowing anything was going to happen, wanting anything to happen, expecting. I didn't. Peer pressure. That's all it was. It spiraled out of control way too fast. It's something that should have never happened. If I knew then what I know now, I would have never have been there. I would have stopped everything from happening, and I would have never let Shanda be picked up in the first place.
She claims peer pressure, so let me say this. Peer pressure, according to Lori, caused her to stab Shanda to help with everything. I call bullshit on many fucking levels. There is really no good way to end this video. All the pain and suffering these 4 women caused is indescribable. The fact that all of them are free is baffling. I do believe in second chances. I am glad at least 3 of them have shown remorse. I am not counting Lori because honestly her statement reads more like she is trying to appear like she's a human being. She did state once that she felt it was her destiny to murder someone. As much as Lori would love to blame peer pressure, as well as Tony and Hope wish to blame peer pressure, I don't think it is. I think that Melinda's violent tendencies were egged on by Lori, that the two fed off each other's rage. I think Tony and Hope should have done something, but in the violence that Lori and Melinda brought that night, they fell into it as well. All 4 have a hand in the death of Shanda Sharer, one filled with rage, one who encouraged the violence, another who was swept up in the moment, and the other who feared what would happen if she stepped in. They may be free from prison, but they will never be free of their own choices. So in closing this video out, I just want to say, cherish the ones you care about. Show them that you love them every day. Love and caring will always defeat the darkness.